the United Kingdom has threatened to withdraw officials and dignitaries from the upcoming Football World Cup in Russia. The threat comes amid claims that Moscow is behind the apparent poisoning of former Russian double agent in UK. Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson said today that the United Kingdom will respond appropriately and robustly if the Russian state is found to have been involved. The statement came amid demands from lawmakers in the House of Commons for a tougher line against Russia. The Kremlin has said that it has no information about the mystery illness of Skripal and his daughter. The Russian Foreign Ministry has dismissed Boris Johnson commenting on this issue, as Russia called them wild.
I must say, I think that if things turn out to be, as many members, I think, on both sides, I suspect that they are, to return to that formula, I think we will have to have a serious conversation about our engagement with Russia. And for my own part, I think it will be very difficult to see how we can, thinking ahead to the World Cup this July, this summer, I think it will be very difficult to imagine that UK representation at that event could go ahead in the normal way, and we would certainly have to consider that.
And I'm joined by our London correspondent, Mandy Clark. Mandy, this is not the first time an episode like this has taken place. Even earlier, a Russian in London was poisoned. He was a former agent who was directly accusing Putin. But this time around, after the statement given by Boris Johnson, how serious is the British government on this issue?
Well, I think the earlier poisoning in 2006 was Alexander Litvinenko. And at the time, Britain's government took a step back. It was Theresa May who was the Home Secretary at the time. Of course, now she is the Prime Minister. And she was seen to have taken a very weak stance against Russia because they were really trying to improve relations. However, obviously, Britain has decided to make a much tougher stance against Russia. They feel that the soft diplomacy hasn't worked. Of course, there was a caveat. Boris Johnson did say if Russia is behind it. They have not created proven links that this was Russian agents, but all speculation here, certainly in the media and as Boris Johnson pointed among lawmakers, is that it seems that the only group that would have a vested interest in attempting to kill this spy is really Russia, and there's no other obvious person who would be behind this attack. So very much, although they don't have any proof, there is a great suspicion now that Russia is behind it. Of course, as you point out, Russia said they have nothing to do with it, and they feel that this is just a part of a targeted campaign against Russia, that they're always deemed the bad guy. But certainly an independent review of the Litvinenko murder found without a doubt that it was Russian agents who were behind his death.
Mandy, last time around, in the case which you referred, it was later found during investigation that a byproduct of plutonium, which is polonium, that was injected, and that's how the death took place. So any report from the Department of Investigation on the substance which was used, like for example, the Kim Jong's brother was sprayed by an AX agent. It's a nerve agent. Which was used in World War II. So is there any clarity on the agent or the substance which was used?
Well, there has been lots of pundits. To answer it quickly, no, they have no clarity exactly what poison was used. When you're referring to Litvinenko case in 2006, it was plutonium-210. It was a very specific derivative of poison. And there are specialists who say that Russia has been creating very specific and targeted poisons, specialized poisons for assassination. So that is the speculation, is that it wouldn't necessarily be the same poison that was used to kill Alexander Litvinenko. They still haven't identified it. It was a noxious substance. It was a poison. And it also was so powerful that a lot of the first responders, those ambulance paramedics that went to treat the spy and his daughter, came down with minor injuries. Mm-hmm. They didn't explain what those injuries are, but they have been released from the hospital.
You stay with me, Mandy. I'm also joined by Lucy Taylor from Moscow. Lucy, my question to you is, what is the official position of the Russian government on this issue?
Well, today we've had the most comprehensive response so far from the Russian authorities, from the spokeswoman for the Foreign Ministry, Maria Zakharova. She again said that attempts to link Russia to this crime are designed to worsen relations between Moscow and London. So very much this is becoming a war of words between the British authorities and the Russian authorities. You heard there the comments from the Foreign Secretary of the United Kingdom, Boris Johnson. Maria Zakharova on the Russian side dismissed his comments as absurd and baseless. She said that it was provocation. She spoke about how this is being reported in the British news as very much linked to Sergei Skripal's history as a Russian spy, and she referred to that as fake news and said that this was a provocation. And very much the story here from the Russian government is that this is another example of a campaign against Russia, of blackening Russia's name, and in particular before presidential elections here in Russia next week. The authorities here are even trying to suggest that this has somehow been cooked up or linked to Russia in an attempt to influence that election.
Lucy, a lot of write-ups have also appeared in the Western press, especially on the disappearance of elder brother of Skripal, his wife, then his son. Apparently, the official reason he's died in an accident, but then the reports have come out that he had a liver failure. So, what's the larger political response within Moscow on this issue?
Well, very much the Russian authorities are denying any link with anything to do with attacks against Mr. Skripal and his family. They say they have no information. The presidential spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, said yesterday they had no information about these cases and had no requests from the British authorities for assistance, for any joint investigative work. Perhaps you might expect that if the Russian authorities believe that the British authorities believe that the Russian authorities were involved. The Russian embassy in London said that it feels as though the British authorities have spoken as if the investigation is already over. Of course, that investigation isn't over. There's very much more work to be done, not least to find out what is the substance that has affected these two critically ill people. But the Russian position is very much that they have no information, no responsibility. They say they will cooperate with the investigation if they're requested to, but so far they say they haven't been.
Thank you, Lucy, and thank you, Mandy, for joining us on this program. Thank you.